The rain fell hard on the south side of Chicago, the kind of rain that washed hope out of gutters and left nothing but cold in its wake. At 2:15 a.m. on a Thursday in November, when even the drug dealers had gone inside and the only sound was water pounding against pavement, a black SUV pulled to the side of an access road near the abandoned railyards. Inside that SUV, a man named Marcus Wright gripped the steering wheel and tried not to look at what was in the back seat. He was 52 years old, a detective with the Chicago Police Department for 23 years, and he had spent the last 6 months watching his life crumble like a sandcastle in rising tide. The divorce had been finalized in June. His daughter, Keisha, had stopped taking his calls in August. "Daddy, I love you, but I can't watch you do this to yourself anymore." The internal affairs investigation had started in September. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because he'd refused to look the other way when certain people in his department had done plenty wrong. By November, he was on unpaid leave, pending review. His pension was frozen. His savings were gone. His ex-wife's lawyer was coming after what little remained. And tomorrow morning, he was supposed to be out of his apartment because he hadn't paid rent in 3 months. But none of that was why he was sitting in a black SUV at 2:15 a.m. on an access road near the abandoned railyards. He was here because of the dog. In the backseat, curled into a tight ball on the worn upholstery, lay a black Labrador mix named Major. 8 years old, 70 pounds of loyalty, with gray starting to show around his muzzle and eyes that had watched Marcus through the worst nights of his life. Major had been there when Marcus's father died. Had been there when Marcus held his mother's hand in the hospice. Had been there through the divorce, through the fights with Keisha, through every single night when Marcus sat alone with a bottle and wondered why he kept going. Major had never once looked away. "You can't come with me," Marcus whispered into the darkness of the SUV. His voice was raw, scraped clean by tears he hadn't let himself cry. "You hear me, boy? You can't." The dog lifted his head. His tail gave one confused thump against the seat. The shelter where Marcus was supposed to go tomorrow didn't accept pets. The mission on West Madison had a waiting list 3 weeks long, and the man on the phone had been clear, absolutely clear, that dogs were not allowed under any circumstances. "Sir," he'd said, "we got men sleeping on mats 6 inches apart. Men with infections, men with mental illness, men who haven't touched another living thing in years. We can't have animals in that mix." Marcus had tried everything. Every shelter, every rescue, every no-kill organization within 50 miles. They were all full, all overwhelmed, all turning away animals faster than they could take them in. The last woman he'd spoken to, a black woman named Denise who sounded as exhausted as Marcus felt, had been brutally honest. "Detective," she'd said, "I'm gonna tell you something I ain't supposed to tell you. We got dogs in here that have been waiting 2 years. 2 years, and we still euthanize 20 animals a week just to make space for the new ones coming in. If you bring your dog here, best case scenario, he waits 6 months and then, well, you understand what I'm saying." Marcus understood. Major had climbed into the front seat now. He pressed his head against Marcus's arm, the way he'd done since he was a puppy, that gesture of pure trust that said, "Whatever you're feeling, I'm here. I'm always here." Marcus couldn't breathe. He'd driven for an hour before ending up here. No plan. No destination. Just driving through the south side streets he'd patrolled as a young officer, past the blocks where he'd grown up, past the church where his parents still had a plaque on the memorial wall, past the school where Keisha had learned to read. Somehow, he'd ended up at the railyards. He knew this place. Knew it from his early years on the force, when he'd worked the midnight shift and answered calls about squatters and drug users and people who had nowhere else to go. Knew the maze of abandoned rail cars and rusted tracks and overgrown weeds where the city's forgotten people went to disappear. It was the kind of place where a dog might survive. If he was smart, if he was lucky, if the winter wasn't too harsh. It was also the kind of place Marcus had told himself he would never, ever leave anything he loved. "I'm sorry," he said. The words came out broken. "I'm so sorry. I can't. I can't be what you need anymore. I can't feed you. I can't keep you warm. I can't give you anything except this. A chance. A chance to find somebody who can." Major looked at him with those dark, knowing eyes. His tail wagged slowly, uncertainly, as if he understood that something was wrong, but couldn't figure out. Marcus opened the door. The rain hit him immediately, cold and unforgiving. He walked around to the back seat, opened the door, and Major jumped out eagerly, tail wagging now because this was an adventure, a late-night walk with his person, his favorite thing in the world. They walked together through the rain, past the chain-link fence that had been cut open years ago, into the maze of abandoned rail cars and rusting machinery. Major stayed close to Marcus's leg, matching his pace perfectly, the way he'd done since he was old enough to walk on a leash. They reached a spot where several derelict rail cars formed a kind of shelter, a space protected from the worst of the rain, with piles of discarded fabric and cardboard that might, if arranged properly, become something like a bed. Marcus stopped. Major stopped too, looked up at him. "Stay," Marcus whispered. "Stay here, boy." Major's ears perked. Stay was a command he knew. Stay meant he was doing something right. Stay meant treats and praise and that warm feeling of making his person happy. He sat down in the mud and waited. Marcus turned and walked away. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He walked with the measured steps of a man who knew that if he looked back, if he saw those eyes watching him, he would lose whatever was left of his resolve. Behind him, Major waited. The rain continued. The temperature dropped. The dog sat exactly where he'd been told to sit, his head tilted, his ears swiveling, listening for the sound of footsteps that would return. They didn't return. At 5:30 a.m., a Chicago police cruiser pulled slowly along the access road near the railyards. Inside that cruiser, Officer Terrence Brooks was finishing his shift. 26 years old, 2 years on the force, assigned to the 3rd District where he'd grown up. His mother still lived 3 blocks from here. His little brother still ran with a crew that Terrence was trying, desperately, to pull out before it was too late. The railyards were part of his regular sweep. Squatters, mostly. People who needed to be moved along before the morning trains started running through the adjacent active lines. It was sad work, the kind of work that made Terrence question why he'd become a cop in the first place. He almost didn't see the dog. But something made him slow down. Something made him park the cruiser and walk toward the cut in the fence, flashlight in hand, the way his father had taught him. Always trust your gut, son. Your gut knows things your brain hasn't figured out yet. The beam of his flashlight found the dog sitting in the mud between 2 rail cars. Terrence stopped. The dog was black, maybe 70 pounds, some kind of labrador mix by the look of him. He was soaked through, shivering violently, but he wasn't moving. He was just sitting there, staring at the path that led back to the road, as if waiting for something. "Hey there, buddy," Terrence said softly. "Hey, you okay?" The dog's ears perked at the sound of his voice. He looked at Terrence, then back at the path, then at Terrence again. There was something in his eyes, something Terrence recognized from years of working these streets. It was the look of somebody who'd been left behind. Terrence crouched down, keeping his distance. He'd dealt with stray dogs before. Some were aggressive, some were terrified, most were both. But this dog wasn't growling, wasn't backing away, was just waiting. "Somebody leave you here?" Terrence asked. The dog's tail gave one tentative wag. Terrence looked around. No collar. No tags. No sign of anyone nearby. Just an abandoned dog in an abandoned place, waiting in the rain for a person who wasn't coming back. He thought about his mother's house, about the small backyard where his nephews played sometimes, about the way his mother had always wanted a dog but couldn't afford one. He thought about the shelter, where he knew, because he'd seen the reports, that dogs like this one didn't last long. "Come on," Terrence said. He stood up and walked slowly toward the opening in the fence. "Come on, buddy. Let's get you out of this rain." The dog didn't move. Terrence turned back, whistled softly. "Come on. It's okay." The dog looked at the path, looked at Terrence. The conflict was visible even in the dim light of the flashlight. Everything in him wanted to wait. Everything in him also knew he was cold and wet and alone, and this new person was making sounds that seemed directed at him. Slowly, painfully slowly, the dog stood up. His legs were stiff from hours in the cold. He took one step toward Terrence, then another. Then, with one final glance at the empty path, he followed. Terrence led him to the cruiser, opened the back door, and the dog climbed in without hesitation. He curled up on the seat, still shivering, still watching Terrence with those dark, questioning eyes. "It's gonna be okay," Terrence said. "I don't know how yet, but it's gonna be okay." He didn't know it yet, but in that moment, on a rainy morning in a police cruiser on the south side of Chicago, two lives had intersected in a way that would change everything. And the story of the dog at the edge of town, the one that would eventually reach millions of hearts, had only just begun. Major spent his first night at Terrence Brooks's mother's house, curled up on a pile of old blankets in the kitchen, close to the radiator that ticked and hummed through the cold November hours. Gloria Brooks had taken one look at the wet, shivering dog her son had brought home and said exactly 4 words: "Get him in here." She was 63 years old, a retired nurse's aide with arthritis in both hands and a heart that had never learned how to turn anyone away. She'd raised 3 children in this house on South Woodlawn Avenue, buried one husband, and watched a neighborhood change around her without ever changing herself. She was the kind of woman who kept extra food for the kids who weren't hers, who left her porch light on for people who needed a place to sit, who prayed every night for the young men she saw standing on corners, hoping they'd find their way home before it was too late. She was also the kind of woman who recognized pain when she saw it, whether in a person or a dog. "This one's been through something," she said the next morning, watching Major eat from a bowl of warmed-up leftovers. "Look at his eyes. He's waiting for somebody." Terrence nodded. Found him at the railyards, just sitting there in the rain, staring at the road. Must have been there all night. Gloria shook her head slowly. Somebody left him. You can see it in the way he watches the door. She crouched down, ignoring the protest from her knees, and held out her hand. Major approached cautiously, sniffed her fingers, and then, slowly, deliberately, pressed his head against her palm. "Hey there, sweet boy," Gloria murmured. "Hey, you're safe now. You hear me? You're safe." Major's tail wagged once, twice, then settled into a steady rhythm. Terrence watched his mother with the dog and felt something loosen in his chest. He'd been worried about bringing Major home. Worried about the extra burden on his mother, who already did too much. Worried about what the neighbors would say, what his captain would think, what it meant for a police officer to take in a stray like it was his job to fix everything broken in this city. But watching his mother with this dog, watching the way Major responded to her gentle touch, he knew he'd done the right thing. "I'll find his owner," Terrence said. "Put up some flyers, check the lost pet databases. Somebody's probably looking for him." Gloria looked up at her son. "You think so?" Terrence thought about the railyards, about the isolation of that place, the miles of abandoned tracks and rusted cars, about the look in Major's eyes when he'd found him, not the look of a dog who'd gotten lost, but the look of a dog who'd been left. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I gotta try." The search took 3 weeks. Terrence posted flyers in every laundromat, grocery store, and community center in a 5-mile radius. He posted on social media, on lost pet websites, on the neighborhood Facebook groups where people shared everything from missing cats to complaints about potholes. He called every vet clinic, every animal hospital, every shelter within 20 miles. Nothing. No one was looking for a black Labrador mix named anything. No one had reported a dog matching Major's description. It was as if the dog had simply materialized out of the rain, without a past, without a person, without anyone who missed him. I don't understand it, Terrence told his mother one evening, frustration creeping into his voice. This dog is... he's something special. He's trained. He knows commands. Somebody spent time with this dog. Somebody loved him. Gloria was sitting on the couch with Major's head in her lap. The dog had claimed this spot as his own over the past weeks, settling into the Brooks household with a quiet gratitude that broke your heart if you thought about it too long. He didn't ask for much. Didn't beg at the table, didn't bark at passersby, didn't chew things he shouldn't. He just wanted to be near them. To follow them from room to room. To rest his head on whatever part of them was closest. Maybe they did love him, Gloria said quietly. Maybe that's why they let him go. Terrence frowned. What do you mean? Gloria stroked Major's ears, and the dog closed his eyes in contentment. People give up things they love all the time, baby. Not because they stopped loving them, but because they can't hold on anymore. They lose their job, lose their home, lose their way. And the things they love, the people, the pets, the pieces of their heart, they become weights they can't carry. So they set them down. Somewhere, they hope somebody will find them. Terrence thought about that. Thought about the railyards, the isolation of that place, the way Major had been waiting rather than wandering. Waiting for somebody to come back. You think that's what happened? Somebody couldn't afford to keep him anymore. Could be, Gloria said. Could be a lot of things. What matters is he's here now. And we're gonna take care of him for as long as he needs us to. That was November. By December, Major had become part of the family in ways none of them had expected. He walked with Terrence to the train station every morning, then met him there every night, waiting patiently on the corner until he saw Terrence's familiar figure coming down the steps. He sat with Gloria while she watched her stories, his head on her lap, his tail thumping whenever she laughed at something on the screen. He guarded the backyard from squirrels and stray cats with a dignity that made Gloria laugh out loud. He thinks he's protecting us, she said. Like we're his people now. We are his people now, Terrence said. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, Major would go to the front window and look out at the street. He would sit there for hours, watching the cars pass, watching the shadows move, watching for something, someone that none of them could see. Gloria noticed. She noticed everything. He's still waiting, she told Terrence one morning. Part of him is still out there on that road, waiting for whoever left him to come back. Terrence sighed. Will he ever stop? I don't know, baby. I honestly don't know. January brought the coldest weather Chicago had seen in a decade. Temperatures dropped to -15 on the worst nights, and the city shut down under layers of snow and ice. Terrence worked double shifts covering for officers who couldn't make it in. Gloria's arthritis flared up, leaving her hands swollen and painful. And Major never left Gloria's side. He seemed to know when she was hurting. Would rest his head on her lap exactly where it didn't press on her swollen joints. Would bring her the heating pad in his mouth when he saw her rubbing her hands. Would stand between her and the door whenever someone knocked, a silent guardian who asked nothing in return. He's special, Gloria said one night. That dog is special. Somebody did a lot of training with him. Somebody spent years making him into the dog he is. Terrence nodded. He'd been thinking the same thing. Major wasn't just well-behaved. He was attentive in a way that suggested he'd been trained for something specific. He responded to hand signals as well as voice commands. He could open doors with his nose. He would sit and stay for hours without moving, waiting for a command that never came. What do you think he was? Terrence asked. Some kind of service dog? Maybe, Gloria said. Or maybe just a dog who loved somebody so much he learned to read their mind. She paused. Whoever that somebody was, they must be missing him something terrible. Terrence looked at Major, curled up at his mother's feet, his eyes half closed but still watching the door. Or they're not, he said quietly. Maybe they don't deserve to miss him. February brought a thaw, and with it, an encounter that would change everything. Terrence was walking Major through Washington Park on a Saturday morning, enjoying the first real sunshine in weeks. The dog was happy, bounding through patches of snow, chasing squirrels with the energy of a puppy half his age. For a moment, watching him play, Terrence forgot about the railyards and the rain and the mystery of where this dog had come from. Then he saw the man on the bench. He was black, maybe early 50s, with a kind of worn-down look that Terrence recognized from years on the force. Not homeless, exactly. His clothes were clean, if cheap, but close to it. Close to the edge. Close to the place where people fall and don't get back up. The man was watching Major. Not the way people usually watched dogs, with casual interest or vague affection. He was watching like he was seeing a ghost. Like he couldn't believe what was in front of him. Like he might start crying at any moment. Terrence slowed down. His cop instincts kicked in, scanning for threats, for weapons, for anything that might explain this man's intensity. Major noticed the man at the same moment. The dog froze. His ears went up. His whole body went rigid with something that looked like recognition. Then, before Terrence could react, Major took off running. 70 pounds of black fur hurtling across the park toward the man on the bench. Terrence shouted, ran after him, but Major was too fast, too focused, too certain of where he was going. The man stood up as Major reached him. He dropped to his knees in the snow, and the dog crashed into him, whining, barking, licking his face with the desperate joy of someone who had found what they'd been searching for. "I'm sorry," the man was saying, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I came back. I came back looking for you, but you were gone. I thought you were dead." Terrence stopped running. He stood 20 feet away, watching the stranger wrap his arms around Major, watching Major's tail wag with a happiness Terrence had never seen in him before, and he understood. This was the one. The person Major had been waiting for. The person who had left him in the rain. Terrence's hand moved instinctively to his belt, where his service weapon would have been if he was on duty. He wasn't on duty. He was just a man in a park with a dog that didn't belong to him. Or maybe it did. Maybe it never had. The man on his knees in the snow was Marcus Wright, and he had been looking for Major for 3 months. After that night, that terrible, shameful night when he'd driven away and left Major at the railyards, Marcus had gone back. Not the next morning, because he'd been too drunk to drive, but the morning after that, when the hangover had cleared enough for him to think straight. Major wasn't there. Marcus had searched for hours, days, weeks. He'd walked miles of rail lines, called every shelter, posted flyers with Major's picture and a reward he couldn't afford. Nothing. No one had seen a black Labrador mix. No one had reported finding a dog matching Major's description. He told himself the same story he told everyone who asked. Major had run away. Had gotten out of the apartment when Marcus wasn't looking. Had disappeared into the city and never come back. It was a lie, and he knew it, but it was easier than the truth. The truth was that Marcus had given up. Had looked at his life, the ruined career, the broken marriage, the daughter who wouldn't speak to him, and decided he couldn't drag Major through whatever came next. The truth was that he'd told himself he was being noble, setting Major free to find a better life, when really he was just too tired to keep fighting. The truth was that he'd left the best thing in his life sitting in the rain, waiting for him to come back, and he hadn't come back until it was too late. Until now. "Major," he whispered into the dog's fur. "Major, Major, Major." The dog responded with more wagging, more licking, more of that overwhelming joy that asked no questions and held no grudges. Dogs didn't understand abandonment the way humans did. They understood that their person had been gone, and now their person was back, and that was enough. But humans understood. Terrence stood frozen at the edge of the scene, his heart pounding, his mind racing through 1,000 questions. Who was this man? Why had he left Major? What gave him the right to come back now, after everything, after Terrence had spent 3 months falling in love with a dog that was never really his? "Hey," Terrence said. His voice came out harder than he intended. "Hey, you need to step back from the dog." Marcus looked up. His face was wet. From tears or melting snow, it was impossible to tell. He saw the uniform, saw the badge, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition. Not of Terrence personally, but of what he represented. Authority. The kind of authority that could make things very difficult for a man like Marcus Wright. "I'm not." Marcus started. "He's my dog. He's been my dog for 8 years. I raised him from a puppy." Terrence stepped closer. "Then why'd I find him sitting in the rain at the railyards 3 months ago? Why'd I spend weeks looking for his owner, while he slept on my mother's floor and waited by the window every night for somebody who never came?" The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He flinched, and Major, sensing his distress, pressed closer to him, whining softly. "I can explain," Marcus said. "I mean, I can't explain. Not in a way that makes it okay, but I can tell you what happened." Terrence stood there, in the snow of Washington Park, with a dog between them, and 3 months of questions hanging in the air. He should call this in. Should run this man's name, check for warrants, treat him like the animal abuser he might be. Instead, he said, "Talk." They sat on the bench, Marcus on one end, Terrence on the other, Major stretched out between them like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. Marcus told him everything. The divorce, the investigation, the unpaid leave, the apartment he'd lost, the daughter who wouldn't talk to him. The night in the rain, the drive to the railyards, the moment he'd told Major to stay and walked away. He didn't make excuses, didn't try to soften it. He laid it out, all of it, and waited for Terrence to do whatever he was going to do. When he finished, Terrence was quiet for a long time. "My father left when I was 7, Terrence said finally. Just walked out one day and never came back. No explanation. No goodbye. Nothing. My mother raised 3 kids on a nurse's aide salary, worked double shifts until her hands gave out, and never once complained about it." He paused. "I spent a lot of years being angry at that man, wondering what was wrong with me that he couldn't stay." Marcus didn't respond. There was nothing to say. "Major's been sleeping on my mother's floor for 3 months," Terrence continued. "She's got arthritis bad, can barely use her hands some days. He brings her the heating pad. Did you teach him that?" Marcus nodded slowly. His previous owner, my father, had arthritis. Major learned to help him. When my father passed, Major just kept doing it. Kept helping. He's got more heart than anybody I ever met. He waited for you, Terrence said. All that time. Every night, he'd go to the window and watch for you. My mother noticed it right away. Said part of him was still out there on that road, waiting for somebody to come back." Marcus closed his eyes. The tears came again, and this time he didn't try to stop them. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he whispered. "I thought I was giving him a chance at a better life. I couldn't feed him. Couldn't keep him warm. Couldn't give him anything except yourself," Terrence interrupted. "That's what dogs want. Not food, not warmth, not a better life. Just you, just their person." He shook his head. "You know that. You've had him 8 years. You know that better than anybody." Marcus nodded. "I know. I've always known. I couldn't see it through everything else." They sat in silence for another long moment. "Major," sensing that something important was happening, looked between them with those dark, patient eyes. "What do we do now?" Marcus asked finally. Terrence thought about his mother. About the way she'd looked at Major that first morning, the way she'd said, "He's safe now," like it was the most important thing in the world. About the heating pad, and the walks to the train station, and the way Major's tail thumped against the floor whenever Gloria laughed at her stories. "He's not just your dog anymore," Terrence said. "He's hers too. My mother's. She loves him like he's been hers forever." Marcus's face fell. He'd expected this, maybe even prepared for it, but it still hurt. "I understand. You found him. You took care of him. He's yours now." "That's not what I'm saying." Terrence turned to face him fully. "I'm saying he's ours. All of ours. He's got enough love for everybody." Marcus stared at him. "What?" "Look at him." Terrence gestured at Major, who was now watching a squirrel with mild interest, his tail wagging lazily. "He's happy. He's healthy. He's got my mother wrapped around his paw, and he's got you back. You think he wants to choose between us? You think he even understands the concept of choosing?" Marcus didn't know what to say. "My mother's got a backyard," Terrence continued. "Big enough for a dog to run around. She's home all day, keeps the place warm, talks to him like he's one of us. And you're his person. The one he's been waiting for. The one he'll always wait for." He paused. "So here's what I'm thinking. You come by the house. Meet my mother. See Major whenever you want. Walk him, feed him, take him to the park. And when you get back on your feet, and you will get back on your feet, we figure out the next step. Together." Marcus's eyes were wet again. "You don't even know me." "I know your dog," Terrence said. "That's enough." Gloria Brooks opened her door that evening to find her son standing on the porch with a strange man and the dog she'd come to love like family. "Ma," Terrence said, "this is Marcus. He's Major's person. The one who had to let him go." Gloria looked at Marcus for a long, searching moment. She saw the grief in his eyes, the shame, the desperate hope. She saw a man who had done something unforgivable and spent every day since trying to forgive himself. Then she looked at Major, who was wagging his tail so hard his whole body moved with it, looking between Marcus and Gloria with an expression of pure, uncomplicated joy. "Come in," she said. "It's cold out there." Marcus stepped inside. Major pressed against his leg, then against Gloria's, then back to Marcus, unable to contain his happiness at having both of his people in the same place. Gloria watched this for a moment. Then she reached out and took Marcus's hand. "I don't know what happened," she said, "and I don't need to know. What I know is that dog loves you, and he loves us too, and love like that, it don't come along every day. You don't throw it away because things got complicated." Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded. "Supper's in an hour," Gloria continued. "You're staying. And after supper, you're gonna tell me about yourself. The good parts and the bad parts. Because if you're gonna be part of this family, and you are, whether you like it or not, I need to know who I'm feeding." Marcus looked at Terrence, who shrugged with a small smile. "She does this," Terrence said. "You get used to it." 6 months later, on a warm June evening, 3 people sat on Gloria Brooks's porch, watching a black dog chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. Marcus had gotten his pension. Not the full amount. The investigation had cost him that. But enough. Enough for a small apartment 6 blocks away. Enough to start over. Enough to show up at Gloria's door every Saturday morning with donuts and a willingness to help with whatever needed doing. Keisha had started taking his calls again. Slowly, cautiously, but taking them. She'd come to dinner last week, had sat on this very porch and watched Major with her father, and something in her eyes had softened. "You did something right," she'd said. "With that dog, you must have done something right." Terrence had been promoted. He worked the same streets he'd always worked, but something had shifted in him. He was gentler now, more patient, more willing to see the people behind the problems. Gloria's arthritis hadn't gotten any better, but she laughed more than she had in years. Between her son and her new friend and the dog who never left her side, she had everything she needed. And Major had finally stopped watching the window at night. He didn't need to watch anymore. Everyone he loved was right here. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Marcus said, breaking the comfortable silence. "What's that?" Terrence asked. "That night, at the railyards, I keep thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't come along. If you'd driven past. If you decided it wasn't your problem." Terrence was quiet for a moment. "I almost did. Almost kept driving. But something made me stop." "Something," Gloria repeated. "Or someone." They both looked at her. "I'm just saying," she continued, "there's a reason things happen the way they do. That dog needed to be found. You needed to find him. And Marcus." She paused. "Marcus needed to lose something before he could find his way back." Marcus nodded slowly. "I did. I lost everything. But I found." He gestured at the porch, at the people on it, at the dog in the yard. I found this." Major, hearing his name or sensing the attention, trotted up onto the porch and laid his head on Marcus's knee. His tail wagged once, twice, then settled into the steady rhythm of contentment. The dog who had been left in the rain had found not one home, but 3. Not one heart, but a family of hearts that had learned, through him, how to beat together. And on a porch in Chicago, 3 people and 1 dog sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fireflies dance in the summer night and knowing, finally knowing, that they were exactly where they belonged.